Yeah, so I guess the author is kind of treating this, it's almost as if it's social proof that you are sort of a decent human being, maybe, right? So, like, if you haven't made friends, by the time you're 20, then you probably, that you might be a little odd or something. And, I would say that I don't know if that's even true, in terms of our society. The way our society is set up, we really don't, it's not really set up in such a way that we can even have those kinds of, um, that we can have those kinds of interactions because, most people, we live in suburbs, at least in America, right? In the United States, it's not really possible, not in the same way that it was if you lived in a small town or if you lived, kind of 100 years ago. It's not, I don't feel like it's even possible. And I also don't necessarily, what if you are raised in a rural environment? You know what I mean? Like, what if you're raised by your grandparents in a farm somewhere and you're solitary? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like some people kind of are like that. And especially nowadays, it's very common. Now, I will give the flip side to this. And I would argue that I don't even think that a true, like, you can't really have kind of the deep friendships that you would have had, let's say, if if you grew up in caveman times or something. And the reason why I say that is because during back, I guess during ancient, or it doesn't even have to be during cave people, just before modernity, right? Before the suburb. It was common for people wouldn't move. It was very difficult and expensive to move around. And it was also very difficult to, most people, they didn't, they kind of just stayed put. And it was very easy. You knew everybody. Like, it was one of those things where everyone knew each other. You knew everyone in the neighborhood, even in cities, believe it or not, even in urban areas, but especially, like, people didn't move around as much as today. And I feel like today we don't connect. It's not even possible anyway. I don't even think that even if you grew up in a modern civilization, anywhere, you wouldn't, I don't even think you could replicate what the author is saying in this article, because a childhood friend, why limit it to one childhood friend? I don't even think that those deep connections that were possible in the past are really possible today in the same way. So I'll give an example. And then my parents, they grew up in a small town. And it wasn't a small town. It was kind of, I guess it was a town. And everyone knew each other. Like, everyone knew each other. Everyone knew everyone's history. And they kept in touch. And my parents, for decades, have kept in touch with every single, it's like, imagine if you could keep in touch on their phones and on Facebook and whatever with, I don't even know how, I can't even describe it, like 30, 50 people. Like, no kidding. They keep in touch, both my parents keep in touch with 30, 40, 50 people that they knew when they were in high school, that they knew growing up. Not just in high school. They literally, they grew up in different towns, but they grew up in kind of a setting where they were surrounded by people where everyone knew each other. They grew up in an environment. That's not possible today. And I can't even describe it properly because people wouldn't understand. I don't think that's even possible in America. I don't know of anyone in America that could claim what I just said, that has 40, 50 friends from your childhood, and not just childhood friends, from all generations. They knew their parents and their grandparents. They knew the stories of everyone, because back then, I guess that's just how it was. And so I guess what I'm saying is they, right? You might say, oh my gosh, it's special, right? It means that you're trustworthy, or, right? That's what the article claims, right? That there's something special about this. And what I would argue, and I'm saying this because I have I have experience. I know, obviously, I get to meet all of the friends that my parents have. and I meet them all, and I understand, like, and it is interesting. I mean, it is kind of cool to like be chatting up with people that my parents knew since they were in grade school, and also from, like I said, from multiple generations, like, because they had big families, so they know people 10 years older and 10 years younger, and everyone, like, it's really weird. And what I'm saying is, does that necessarily make them more trustworthy, or does that make them, like, does that give you social, like, value? And honestly, and this is what I'm using as proof, is that, my parents, they're just normal people. And the friends that my parents have are normal people too. Like, they're not special. Having friends doesn't make you special. Like, my parents are just normal people. I don't see them as any different. They still have, the same struggles. Like, yeah, I guess, I mean, do you know what I mean? Like, what I'm saying is that people are just people. Like, it doesn't make a difference. And the friends that my parents have too, it's not like they're special. It's not like Cheers or something. I mean, they do get along, don't get me wrong, but it's not like, it's not any different than what if you didn't have it. I just don't see the difference. It's not like they're any special. They're just humans. Like, at the end of the day, I mean, as weird as it sounds, not to negate the aspect of friendship, but really, like, yeah, friendships matter. Yes, it's cool, but I'm just using this as a case where it really, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Like, as absurd as that sounds. And I say that because, with my parents, it doesn't, they're just normal people. And the people that they're friends with, and this is like as big of a friendship as you can imagine. I'm pretty sure no one in America has 40, 50 friends from their childhood or from our entire generations. Like, nobody has that. Like, who has that many? Even people who grow up in small towns. Well, maybe, but I just don't know that it would be the same. And my question is, like the average person in America probably doesn't have that experience because of what I said in terms of, because we live in suburbs, right? And so, but if you grew up in a small town, most people don't grow up in small towns. Now, people who do grow up if you grow up in a small town in, like, anywhere, like, you grow up in a small town in America or Europe or wherever, you probably can't have a similar experience, right? So there are people who get that experience, but would I say that makes a huge difference? And I don't know that it does. And now the next thing, of course, is having childhood friends, having friends, most people don't, like, I mean, by chance, right? Like, what are the odds of you being around people who you get along with or who are like you? Like, sometimes you're stuck in a situation or in an environment where you can't help it. You know what I mean? Like, maybe you just happen to, I mean, isn't it random, like, what the people around you are going to be like? So, like, I mean, it's possible to go to a school. I remember, I'd go to school and sometimes you'd have a class where you'd get along with people, and then sometimes you'd have a class where you wouldn't, right? Or, let's say you go to college, right? Most of people go to college, right? Some places you just, like, it's just luck, right? Now, of course, over time, yeah, your chances of finding people you get along with are greater, but sometimes it can be bigger than that. Sometimes it's entirely possible to not have that. And so to not meet people who really are like you. And sometimes it can be a generational thing. It can be like, it can almost feel like have you ever, it can almost feel like a lot of people who might be different from you or might not. I sometimes find myself, like, you have to change the environment, of course, because some people prefer to be a little crazier, to be a little louder, and then other people prefer quietness, and different cultures appeal to that. And I think that's why sometimes you meet people who are, who really like Japanese culture, for example, right? Because it's different from American culture. So there's some Americans who kind of feel a connection and an affinity to that, right? So I don't know that it's, correct to say that, well, that there is one way towards happiness, right? Or one way to define friendship, right? So to me, I guess the other thing I would say is, when we're talking about friendship, like, yes, it's good to have, people alongside you, but it has been my experience that people change over time. Like, it's very unlikely, even if you did make friends as a childhood friend, it's very unlikely that most childhood friends will actually be like you, or that you'll be able to maintain the level of camaraderie that you did. And it's not your fault. And I've spoken to multiple people who have had friends, right? And this is not just me. This is me talking to people and asking them, hey, like, what was it like? What has your experience been? And from what I have heard, people tell me, and these are, and all you have to do is ask kind of older people, right? Ask them like, hey, where are your friends, right? Like, you can ask older people, and you know what a lot of older people have told me? That people change over time. So it's actually irrelevant whether you've had friends or not. Believe it or not, it doesn't matter, because as you grow up, like, things change, people change. And sometimes you might think that it's because, okay, so here's Billie Eilish holding, what is that, an Oscar? Okay. So what I'm saying is, people change. So the people that you thought were your friends, sometimes they change. Like, why do they change? There's a variety of reasons. Sometimes they change because they want to change. Sometimes they change because they get married and then they don't want to be with you anymore as much. Sometimes people change because their personality changes. And they choose to go down a path that you don't want to go down, right? That they're starting to make choices. Sometimes it's their choice. Sometimes it's not their choice. Sometimes it feels like, and I know this sounds really weird. I don't know if you guys have ever had this experience where you meet someone and then like a year later, it's almost like a switch goes off in their head and they're like a completely different person. And like they're like, they used to be one way and then now they're like completely different. And then it's like, whoa, like, how did that happen? And it may have been a choice. Maybe they don't want to be what they were before, or it could be without their choice. Like, I think it's possible people sometimes change without you, like, I don't even know how to explain it. Like, people change without reasoning, and they don't even realize it themselves. And sometimes people change because, I don't know. Maybe it could be a chemistry thing. It could be, especially this happens a lot in, in big transitions in life. For example, if someone becomes a parent, suddenly they change. Like, they're not the same person anymore. And after years of being a parent, they're no longer the same. It's like not the same girl that you used to know, or the same guy. People change. Sometimes circumstances causes them to change. Sometimes it could be sometimes it's a decision, but other times I really do think, I mean, it sounds really weird, but I really feel like people sometimes, it's like someone else takes over their brain. And that person that you knew before doesn't exist anymore. Another example is like older people. When they, a lot of people often, they tell me that, when grandpa, when a person gets older, they change their personality. Sometimes they become more one way, sometimes they become nicer, sometimes it's like, you never know what they're going to be like, but people change because of, I don't know, because life, because people change. And sometimes the person that you used to like trust or you used to like, hey, like you felt like you could talk to them, and then all of a sudden you can't talk to them anymore. Another thing too is, and I haven't talked about this, but like sometimes people change and they don't just change Like I just said right now, which is that it's almost like that compassion that they had, they don't have anymore. Or like sometimes it can be that change. It can almost feel like it's not the same person anymore, which is ridiculous to say, isn't it? Isn't that ridiculous? But I don't know why that is. It's almost like the brain is not static. And if the brain is not static, then our personhood is not static either. We change. And sometimes it's something that's more appealing to you, and sometimes it's not appealing to you. And what's sad is that you try to bring up like, hey, you used to be the other way, remember? And it literally feels like you're talking to someone who doesn't remember at all. And that happens too. Like, that's not a thing. Like, some people, and this is kind of the weird thing, some people have good memories. Some people don't have memories. Some people remember everything that happened and they don't change. Other people, most people change a little bit as they, learn and gain knowledge. But I'm saying, like, some people, they experience life as one long timeline, right? Timeline. But then other people, they don't experience that. Other people, it's like their brain gets reset and they don't remember what happened before. And that can be like, imagine if you talk to someone and you tell them, hey, do you remember, all the things we used to do? And they're like, and they genuinely don't, maybe because their brain literally forgot. Like, that's within possibilities. Like, and the things that you care about, and how often, it's so sad. Like, have you ever thought, and it's like, hey, I used to know this person, but you don't even remember their name? And it's like, you spent so much time with that person, but I don't even remember their name, and I barely remember what even happened. And it's like, but someone else might remember that very well. And there's something weird about that we all remember and stop remembering different things. We're not all on the same page. And so some people are going to remember something, and then that other person might not remember it at all because their brain forgot about it. And so now it's like it never happened. So, does friendship, and so anyway, maybe I'm just talking about something else, but yeah, so I guess, but I think the argument still holds, which is that I don't think, or my argument at least, is that I don't think that it matters in the end, because there's just too many, because most people change anyway. So there's always an opportunity. If you want friendship, I feel like friendship is always ephemeral. And that, I hope that's not like, yeah, you can keep it up, obviously, but I feel like not everyone can have sort of a static, not everyone experiences things the same way. And just because somebody sticks around with you doesn't mean that they even like you. That's another thing too. Like, how often do you meet people, they're like, oh yeah, they hang out, but sometimes, I don't know, there's just so many variations. Like, some people, they hang around because they're jealous of you, or because they just, because you're paying them, you're giving them a free meal, but otherwise they actually don't care about you that same way. Like, you just never know why someone is even sticking around anyway. But sometimes they're just with you because you happen to look good. You're a good-looking person. It's like, oh, it's because of how you look or how you... And it's like, well, is that really a friendship? Like, do you know what I mean? There's just so many different scenarios. And I guess what I'm saying is, at any time, in life, you can't force these things. And so it's entirely possible that, I don't think the interactions that I've had that are amazing and the connections that I've made, oftentimes I didn't plan it, And so and the thing is, of course, you have to kind of let people be and accept them as they are. And you take your life one step at a time, and really, you just kind of try to enjoy life as it is, and there's no need to you just take life as it is, and sometimes you can't worry about, like, all you can do, the only thing I can control is myself. The only thing you can control is yourself. So when you're dealing with people, it's always like, you never know when they're going to leave you or when they're going to change. So at the end of the day, you just kind of hope that, they don't go too far. But sometimes they do. And there's really nothing you can do about that. And I feel like, I don't know, it's always good, so the article talks about how, I guess Billie Eilish is getting friends or whatever, that she's been making friends, but she couldn't make friends before, but it's like, I don't know, I think, Billie Eilish just do whatever, it's not a big deal. Like, I don't think it's something people should worry about, and especially nowadays, it's so common. I think most Americans actually are not in a position where they can, they're not growing up in a small town where they can just have access to, generations of people all knowing each other. Like, that's not how most of us live anymore. And so coming from the suburbs, you need to approach life differently. And I don't know that it's necessarily a bad thing or good thing. I feel like your morality and your sense of, your altruism, that can exist without, that exists within you. It's not something that, you don't have to, I don't know, you don't have to have friends to do that, I don't think. But maybe that's just my view. I mean, what do you all think? So I would argue that, first off, this is like the norm, I think, in modern society. And I wonder if this person has ever been to America, because in America, this is more pronouncedly so. Because I've noticed that, for example, in the UK and in Europe, they're very social. It's part of the environment, right? It's an effect of the environment because, in the UK and in France and Germany, they live in much tighter, smaller areas, right? And it's more of a city. It's, you're taking the tube to work. It's more like people are forced to be together. People are more polite with each other. But in America, this is not how it is at all. In fact, it's pretty normal in America for people to just kind of be on their own. And it's just a part of their culture. It's just a part of American culture. Like, in America, most people, even a European person, and this is something that I've talked to Europeans with, they often get sad when they come to America, for an extended period, because they'll say to me, I've talked to people from Europe, and they'll say to me, it's really hard to make friends in America. And it's like, they'll spend a year, 2 years, and not make any friends. And it's not that they're unlikable or that they're different. Or that Americans are even rude. I think a lot of it is that Americans are just so busy. And that's part of the culture. And most Americans, well, not only is it busy, but also people are isolated. They live in suburbs. They're busy. Most of the time they're commuting. They spend all their time in their cars by themselves and go into the grocery stores by themselves. Everything is solitary to the point where, maybe once a week you'll hang out with people, twice a week, I don't know. But the point is, it's very common, especially once, you get out of college or, once you get out of the education system, you are pretty much at work. People are working, and a job is, oftentimes a solitary experience. And even if, of course, you still get to socialize at work, but it's not the same, right? At the end of the day, you're not really controlling your schedule. And so it affects how people are. And I feel like in America, it's the norm for people to not, to be so busy that there's barely any time to. That's just a consequence of industry, and our, because the economy has to move, people have to do things, so that's kind of what makes America what it is. And I think, everything is a quid pro quo. I mean, everything is like, or I don't know if I said that right. What I meant to say is that everything is, you have to choose how you want to live, and a lot of times, in order to be successful, you have to sacrifice. So that's an even other reason. So many reasons why people have an incentive to just be on their own. And if you want to be anything great, like if you want to be an astronaut, or if you want to be, do you know what I mean? I mean, you can still, of course, you can still have friends while doing all these things, but I guess it's just challenging. Some people, I guess, you could probably do it in different ways, but like I said, sometimes it's not as simple. And like I said before, I mean, I don't know, I guess I've said a lot of things. Like, for example, that is it really even effective? Like I said before, people change anyway. So it's like, you'll spend 5 years, you were friends with someone, okay, that's cool, but then 5 years later, they don't talk to you anymore. And it's like, okay, doesn't that feel like a waste? Like, it's like, oh, look, I had a friend. Yeah, but they're not your friend anymore. So, so does that count? It's like, well, I guess that makes you a good person. Yeah, but nobody is going to, if you tell someone, oh yeah, I used to have a friend 5 years ago that would hang out with me, but now they don't. And it's like, okay, it's like it never happened, because there's no reason to even bring them up, right? Nowadays. So it's like it never even happened. So even if you did have friends, at any moment, life goes on, and then they stop being your friend, and then, do you know what I mean? So anyway, so I appreciate this article, though. Obviously, it's great to hear different opinions. I do, maybe I'm wrong, right? Like, maybe there's something I can learn from this, and I hope you all can appreciate these, this as a learning experience as well. I want to thank. This is. I mean, it's an interesting article. And obviously, hopefully, Billie Eilish, whatever happens, it's fine. I did think this was interesting because I thought I had, I have a unique experience, I guess, from my own, from my parents specifically, where they have it. They have lots of friends, like tons, like probably more friends than the average person would have. There's no way that most people would have, and yet they're still normal people. I don't necessarily see them as, they're pretty normal, and the friends that they have, that my parents have, are pretty normal too. Like, they're not even, like, they don't even care, is what I'm saying. Like, it's weird how that is. Like, we value it so much. And my parents, who have the very thing that most Americans crave, right? Like, having like 50 people that you just have known all your lives. It's more than 50 people. Are you kidding me? And yet, if you grew up in a small town, like, for years, like, that's how it is. But, I'm just saying, like, they don't even care is what I'm saying. I wonder if, sometimes, like, are friends overrated? I don't know. Like, at the end of the day, life is what you make of it. And so, I don't know. I hope no matter what, that we are all able to, find fulfillment in life. And so anyway, thank you to this article, and thank you, Billie Eilish, for showing us. And I hope you all enjoy, and what do you all think, and subscribe, and I'll commentate, or I'll make comments, and I appreciate you all watching. So subscribe, and you all take care.